Welcome back to the latest episode of the How We Roll Gaming podcast. Robert, Nick, how you guys doing?
We are doing very well.
I'm doing really great for a Wednesday.
But we've been very busy.
Yep, been very busy, both with real world adulting type stuff
The worst.
and prepping for Gamer Nation Con, which as we record this is next week. As we drop this episode, it will start tomorrow, Thursday, April, what is that, the 3rd?
That would
Yeah.
be the third, yes.
A bunch of us that are going were comparing schedules earlier, and the only reason I have a block free of about 3 hours on Saturday afternoon is because I'm going to the 1 hour Q&A with Sam Gregor Stewart, the RPG director of Edge Studio. And well, the block of games also starts at 1 o'clock, so everything will have been going for about an hour when the Q&A is done. It's great to see all of the people from the con again. I know that last year was Robert's first time going. Nick, it was your second time going. You will see what Stephanie and I have been saying all these years about how, no, once you go, you're family.
It's true. It's like
So,
I lapsed a year in mine, if I remember correctly. And they still remembered me fondly, and I was like, hi.
Yeah, we're going to see
Yeah.
Steve again because he's coming to our Delta Green campaign, or little one-shot campaign.
he's coming to Delta Green, and because our schedules didn't align with when he had one of his games scheduled that several of us were interested in playing, he is kind enough that he's going to be running it as a pickup game on Saturday afternoon specifically for our group. So, Steve, we appreciate you. We love you. Shout out to the Me and Steve Talk RPGs podcast because you're doing us a solid. We love gaming with you, and thank you so much for going out of your way to accommodate our little band of misfits being able to shenanigan together with you.
Yes,
So
thank you
excited.
very much. First experience with you was with Havoc Brigade, and that's always going to be a great high.
That is a constant story around the table.
It is. It is. I love playing games with Steve. Steve is the person who first ran Delta Green for me and Stephanie.
It's kind
And
of
Ooh,
kind of
that's
a-
great.
it's kind of a fun round circle thing.
yep, it's coming full circle that he's been messaging me on Discord. He is excited that he is able to get in all 3 parts of our Delta Green 3-parter this
It
year.
really, we get to see the impact that he made on you, and he gets to see the end result of that, our collaborative effort. But
And I'm just looking forward to see which character he picks.
Yeah, especially considering we had way too much fun making the pre-gens, and we have 8 pre-gens for a 6-seat table.
we assume casualties.
Yeah, we assume casualties, but
Either
yeah.
to sanity or to deaths.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
We'll get there.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to the con.
You and I have a big event going on during the con as well. Our
Our 2-table
full.
simultaneous. I just made a new word.
You made a new word. Good job.
Simultaneous
That's pretty bad.
alien game.
Yeah, actually, how's it looking? Are you guys getting pretty balanced, or is it still one? It's a little bit
last
heavier than the other?
We've been evening out.
Last I looked, I'm full and Nick is half full. I haven't looked in the last couple of days, but I will say this. I'm excited because one of my favorite players from the con is signed up at my table. I have a guess as to what character she's going to pick to play.
Oh, I call dibs on them.
What Stephanie and I
Just to steal them away from you.
what
Just
Stephanie
kidding,
and I
just kidding.
have talked about doing is writing down the name of the character, because we both agree on what character we think she's going to pick. We're talking about writing it down on a card, sealing it in an envelope, and taking it with us. And once she picks her character, if it is that one, opening it up, look, Freya, we guessed your character. I just have a gut feeling she is an awesome player. We've spoke on our RPG glory stories about one of our best players is a younger player. It's Brian, who started in games that we were part of when he was about 12-ish, and he's now about 18. Freya falls under that same category. She is an awesome
Ah,
younger player. I want to say that she's mid to late teens at this
oh,
point.
that's great to see that there are so many people at a younger age falling into to this.
Yep.
But it's become so
Oh,
much more. It's
absolutely.
both become more accessible with like not the purchasable, but like online materials and hand me downs as well in physical life. But it's like
Oh,
it
the,
is an expensive hobby, but it's like to see so many people falling into the hobby,
And sharing it
regardless
with
of the
others, just bringing more people into it. It's really good.
yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, Freya and her dad have been there every year that we've been there. I don't know when they started going. They're both great players. And kind of little side note along the lines of great seeing younger players coming into the hobby. Gamer Nation Con, we've talked at length about it going into the last few episodes. It's a small convention. It's 150 people max. That's what the tickets max out at, is 150 people. And so that's where that sense of community comes in and everything. But because it is a small convention, this is the 10th year. In the early years, Saturday nights, they used to have what they called Gamer Nation Con After Dark. 8 o'clock, they kicked out everyone who was under 21, and adult beverages were allowed and encouraged, and it became loud and boisterous. And beginning last year, they eliminated Gamer Nation Con After Dark. And at first, people were like, oh man, is it something about the new venue? And they're like, no, it's not anything about the venue. It's a great problem to have in that we have more people bringing more younger players to the con. And these younger players, they paid the same admission price that the adult players did. They have access to the same games that everyone does, but we were locking them out of 8
The
hours
whole
of
night of
gaming.
the day. Yeah.
Yeah, we were locking them out of a whole night, and that's not fair. So, as much fun as Gamer Nation Con After Dark was, Gamer Nation Con After Dark is retired.
And do wish I could have been part of that, but it still seems like it doesn't matter. The fun will still be the fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you got to be sober, Nick. You got to be sober.
Yes. Well, I have to. Well, I don't have to drive you, but I have to drive myself back.
That too.
It's a nice problem to have that there are more of the next generation of gamers that are attending the convention and having a blast. And I'm starting to see
There
some
was
of them
there were
run
several
games, and
smaller.
that's great.
I saw smaller kids and stuff like that, and it was great. They were having fun. I
Yeah,
heard so much fun. Maybe my example was a little bit a small sample size, but the time I was there, there's always at least a good couple of kids or teens around various
yeah,
ages. It's like everyone, but it didn't look like anyone was like having to change anything. It was just like everyone was having fun.
yeah. It's
I think it's time we get into our topic.
our topic.
We have a
Why?
topic?
What? That's crazy talk, Nick. But yeah, we do have a topic. When you're fishing, you bait a hook, right?
Hmm.
By the same token, when you're starting a new RPG campaign, you need to come up with a good hook to draw in your players. And so, what sort of thing goes into coming up with a good story hook? That's what we're going to take a look at in this episode.
Yes, because there's a good jump off from our session 0 manifesto. Basically, okay, now you've got the campaign, you've got what you're going to set out. So now, how do you, as a GM, actually reel your players into it? Now that you've
And
explained
usually,
everything.
you should have that at least ironed out before the session 0, ideally.
Yeah,
But it
Ideally.
can,
Yeah, it's like you don't go fishing without the fishing rod first.
yeah.
Right.
But it can come together during a session 0 if you have multiple ideas and want to pitch it to the players.
Myself, a lot of times, what I try to do, I try to come up with a high concept elevator pitch for the central idea of the campaign. One of the most recent ones that I started, my Star Wars Rebel Yell campaign, that comes from a couple of different places. That comes from my wife watching the Tatooine Rhapsody episode of Star Wars Visions and saying, I want to play a Hutt rock star someday. And me reading Bono's memoir and talking about how U2 becoming a huge band allows him to travel the world for humanitarian reasons and gives him the money to be able to support all of these humanitarian causes globally. And I got to thinking, an up and coming rock band can travel pretty much anywhere. So what if the rebels engage this band to be kind of part-time operatives to help them fight the Empire? Because at that point,
They have the
you
cover
have them,
story.
they have a cover story, and at some point, as things go on, they're going to be faced with a choice. Do we become the big famous band that we want to be? Or do we continue fighting the good fight?
Which is a fun choice, especially considering the idea of like punk rock against like the punk rock movement and everything about that is about like anti-establishment. It's like if we make that our style, then that puts us on the side that would eventually be like the Empire will cancel the band.
Yeah, kind of on the back end of it. Or do we go forward and try to be famous, but that also means, in a sense, selling out a
Selling
little.
out. Yeah.
Selling out, and you eventually, if you become rich and famous, you're too high profile potentially to
To do
continue.
jobs.
Exactly. So that's a nice little high concept pitch, or it can be as simple as the very first Star Wars game that I ran in the Fantasy Flight now Edge system. I just characterized as this is Star Wars Firefly, and it was just that simple.
I have one that I recently started a campaign in an unconventional way, but I did start one in more the simple way that you described. Our new Fallout for the Fallout RPG, not to be confused with the popular video game
Or TV show.
or TV show.
You say not to be
Popular
confused,
franchise.
but they're all the same IP.
Yeah.
And they go with the content very, very biblically.
Basically, after seeing how much fun we've been having with the starter game, and I've been thinking about this concept for a while, I decided to just dive in with the boilerplate concept that is based off of one of the games of Fallout, but the one with the least amount of rules that I have to follow religiously. Basically, you're vault dwellers. It's been 20 plus years after the bombs drop, and you're in West Virginia.
West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country road.
And it just works.
It just works. It's a simplistic pitch. Their main thing is like they're the first scouts out of the vault. We did character creation. We did basically a session 0 a half session zero. Just given like rules, concepts. Here's all the stuff that you get, and then ended on the cliffhanger just as the vault opened.
No, we went a little bit further, and we ended it in true Fallout fashion by saying, "Okay, we've gone out, we got all our stuff, we got our water, ready to explore the world." And we're sitting at a campfire and saying, "Did anybody bring food?"
It's the concept. It's like you can't be more bare bones of a Fallout plot than that. You leave the vault, you're in the wasteland. What happens next?
Yeah,
but I think from our experience, or do you want to do your campaign first before our joint campaign discussion?
I was going to do my first one. I'll start with the one I'm thinking about is my Cyberpunk campaign. Because all of our players know Cyberpunk. We like the concept, we like the world, kind of how it's been put in. So I was like, okay, I know 2045, Cyberpunk 2045 from Telsorian Games just came out a little bit while ago. So I was like, okay, we'll do one in that. But I was also like, but I know Night City's really fleshed out, but it's kind of been done to death. So I was like, okay, I want somewhere else. I was just looking.
It's the setting location.
Yeah, it's the setting location. There's nothing wrong with it. I just wanted to be a little different. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I still want to be North America because I know North America. So I was like, where do I want to go? And I was like, well, in Cyberpunk, in true Texan fashion, Texas got out of the Union once everything went to pot. So I was like, okay, cool. I can do it in Texas. They're a sovereign country in the Cyberpunk world, completely alone, and I know the attitudes, kind of a little bit of the issues in the real world that can be cyberized. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this in Dallas. It was like, and then with Cyberpunk, I'll say it was a little easier to think of the hook. It's like, well, the whole story of Cyberpunk is basically you're just trying to survive in this world with a bunch of cyberized parts, and you've got your professions, your solos. So it's like, okay, so everyone will make a character who's basically at the bottom of the ladder on the solo field, in the solo world. They're like, you don't have a reputation, you don't got anything, you're just people who woke up or through their life decided, okay, I'm gonna be a cyberpunk, I'm gonna be an edge runner. So I'm like, okay. And you can say whether you lived in Dallas before or you kind of like got dropped off the bus in Dallas. And you all know this one person, this one contact who knows all of you. In some way or another, you can decide how you know him. And he's like, okay, I know you're looking to make a name for yourself, so I know a guy who wants to put together a team, kind of make a new scene in the solo world. And that's how they all met. And then they met my contact and got the job.
Yeah, but it also works with like a simple fact that it's a simple. Your setup is simple, but the stuff that you set up for the campaign, mostly the world building for like building up Dallas in the cyberpunk world.
Yeah, the world building was very fun because I found this map online somewhere where it divided the city of Dallas into a bunch of these colored districts. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. And now I just get to make up what the districts are, what's happening, what gangs there are, what people there are. And it's just been so much fun. And then creating the gigs. At least as far as I'm aware, you guys have been liking my gigs. So.
Oh, we've been loving. And also, the fun part was also just a peek behind the curtain for like the cyberpunk character creation. It creates so many opportunities for the GM.
Very much so. Their way of rolling friends, enemies, and love interests. It's like, okay, you're just giving me stuff to work with. Just giving me everything.
I could have to even have with two characters, me and Dante's character. Dante's one of our players. We rolled similar stuff, so we just say like, okay, we know the same person, but different ways.
Yeah, you know the same person, different ways. She's technically your enemy, but it's going to be different for both of you.
Is his ex my like rival?
Your sworn enemy who took your sister.
There's like this fun situations like that can happen with like certain systems.
Yeah, I think both you and I, and then you and Daryl, for both of our co-campaigns, we really thought through this hook that we were going to use.
Yeah.
And you guys started first, so you guys can explain yours first.
We had the benefit in that one of that hook was written 30, 40 years ago by West End Games, and we
And
just
we
adapted it.
we adapted it. It's the Far Orbit project. The conceit of it is, or do you want to do the trailer bits?
Well, the conceit of it is that you are crew members of a former Imperial ship that the captain
Recently
mutinied
mutinied.
and went rogue and has offered the ship's services to the Rebel Alliance as privateers. Simple enough hook, but there's an additional hook in there in that every player plays 3 characters. They play what I tend to call the command level characters. They're more advanced. They aren't necessarily part of the actual command crew, but they're further up in the hierarchy of the
They can
ship,
they can
more
affect
competent.
they affect changes more on the upper level, like where the ship goes, what missions they take.
They're
Should
the
be.
people who can actually just go up to the captain and talk to him, and he'll listen.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's what I call I borrow a Star Trek term, the away team characters, or what Far Orbit calls the boarding party members, where they're mid-level in terms of experience.
Mostly fighting, but should be able to have a mix of like
Right.
interaction and skills.
They're the ones who get into the mix when the action happens most often. And then there's what I call, again, borrowing from Star Trek, the lower decks characters, the maintenance crew, the support staff, that kind of thing. So everyone has a single character on each of those levels, and which character they play in a given session or sometimes even a given scene is determined by the nature of the scene.
We haven't done one yet, but there could be an entire lower decks session.
Yes, it does require more experienced players because they have to be able to juggle the 3 characters.
To be, because it is, and that's why we did. It was one of the few games that we opened up only to our mostly experienced group, or encourage like people that were willing to try this.
And then there's the one that the 2 of you run.
Yes. And ours, we've alluded to it before, but Nick and I was going to Nick's for an alien campaign. Nobody else showed up, so we just decided to sit down in the playroom and shoot the breeze, and we just looked at something and noticed a pattern, and then that sprung up to like, wait, this is this. This could happen. Wait. Oh, I think we have a campaign.
Like honestly, there was no intention to make a campaign that day, but it just sort of, we were discussing things, and then he mentioned something. It's like, oh yeah, that's, wait, where is that and what relation to place? And then we opened some book, and they're like, frame blast.
What if he did this or connected this to that, and this is why this person is doing this or this and that? And we were just
Now,
like,
admittedly,
yes.
we started out high concept, but we didn't want to reveal the concept, which is why we're still kind of cagey about even talking about the full like development.
Yeah, we've only finished Act 1. We got plenty more stuff to go through before we can start spilling the beans.
But what I immediately told her was like, you don't want to know the full hand that we're playing. We need a hook.
Yes, and so we decided, okay, we're setting this after the Battle of Exegol, basically. The whole kit and caboodle is done. Palpatine's dead, so we were like, okay, so what does a galaxy that's only known war for a good 50-some years do? And we're like, okay.
And also,
there's all this.
Looked into the great unknown.
Yeah, we were like, okay, there's still a lot of unknown stuff. Let's take a page from the High Republic, hyperspace explorers, trying to just chart out that unknown region finally, now that there's just a rest period where nobody's trying to kill each other at high level.
It's exciting. It's something that people knew, just knew.
Yeah, and we use that to expose our hook in game, which hooked our players very well.
What elements do the two of you think make for a good hook? Because we've discussed now, okay, here's some of my hooks that I've used, but what elements do you think go into making a good hook that will draw your players in?
A big one for me, and this is an advantage you have if you have people you know playing with you instead of just a new group, is that I definitely know my players and I know what they like. So I'm able to tailor the hook to both fit my world, but also draw them in.
That is good. I think that's what since we knew our players, Robert, most of them, we were excited for new players or not. But it's like when we were like, okay, here's keywords, key ideas that could like grab them.
Definitely. That's all good. And knowing your players like that does help in creating a good hook, because if you're starting a brand new group, what sounds good to you may have zero interest for the people who
That's
see what you're putting together. But if you know your group, if you're playing with a regular established group and starting a new campaign, it really helps because you're able to say, okay, I know Robert likes this and Nick's likes this, and this fits with what I want to do. So here's how I can tailor that to make it appealing to my players.
general hooks are a lot more difficult. Usually that relies
Yes.
on either solid ideas or not to sound sellouty, but established brands and franchises.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with established brands because that's another useful thing when you're creating a hook. You can go into popular media and see what draws people in.
I started a Star Wars meetup group before we started our How We Roll group. I get, after every single new Star Wars project, we get like 20 to 30 new people signing up.
And unfortunately, they never show up.
If I ever got the whole group together, we would need a convention hall.
Yeah, we could rent out the convention hall.
If everyone in that group showed up, we would be tenfold Gamer Nation Con?
At least 10
Something like
Gamer
that.
Nation cons. But
Now,
it's like, that's just how powerful the brand and franchise of Star Wars is. Whenever a new Star Wars project comes in, a new wave of people instantly click onto that, but isn't their thing, and they don't click off of it. But that is bait. That is a bait for the hook. Just like we were talking about Fallout, one of our contributors in the Casual Nerdy cast, Lauren, has a friend that's interested in playing likes Fallout, and that's a hook for them.
and I even used an example of cross-pollination just a little bit ago. That first FFG Star Wars campaign it's Star Wars Firefly. And that instantly tells you two things. That tells you that it's set in Star Wars, and it tells you the kind of characters and stories to expect the campaign to cover if you're familiar with Firefly.
Actually, a great example of franchise recognition was actually your Cyberpunk, Robert, because you got
Yes.
like some of the largest numbers we got for a first game in a while.
We actually got a new player out of that.
Yeah.
We got a
Who routinely
couple of
shows up
them,
for
one of
Cyberpunk.
which is
Yeah.
stuck around, but
there is so much interest because
Yeah, 'cause
it's
that's
a popular franchise.
Yeah, because not only knowing people is a good advantage with the group, but also knowing how most of the systems are from popular franchises now. You've got your niche groups, but then Aliens, Walking Dead, Cyberpunk, D&D, which has now become very popular, Call of Cthulhu
Yep.
for the more aged people. All these are genres or medias that people know and are attracted to. Because, like you said, yeah, once I put Cyberpunk down, I knew people who like Cyberpunk or who've watched Edge Runners on Netflix Yeah, they're gonna
played
flock.
the game on 2077.
Yeah, they'll flock
There's
and know what type of world they can expect, and I can use that as the base to build up my actual campaign to draw people in.
So sometimes the bait is as easy as like the genre, or well, not the genre, the franchise that you're working with. But what if you're working in trying to be unique? How do you hook someone on something new?
And that is a good question. Took
That's
someone
a
on
Because
really
something
I'm
good
out.
new.
question, considering most of what I have run in my GMing career has been in established IPs.
And that's what I'm asking as well. I'm not asking it as a gotcha question. I'm asking it as like
No, I understand.
genuinely.
Yeah, we get it.
As let's see if we can brainstorm a how to hook someone on something new.
And I
But
think a good
with
thing, at
one
least,
caveat that they're looking for an RPG, so that we don't have to
Well,
bait them into that.
go ahead, Robert. You had something?
well, I think a good way to bring out a hook, at least by yourself, like just with yourself, is that you exude confidence and excitement in it, because that excitement that can rub off on other people. Like, okay, this dude's really excited. This thing must be really fun, and just hints at their curiosity. It's like maybe going once, kind of seeing how it handles, isn't so bad. I'll see what she's excited about,
That's
what the
interesting.
system's like, and maybe I'll like it too. Why not?
The
All I'll
hook
lose
the
is a
hook
few
isn't
hours.
the hook isn't narrative or RPG or system based. It's the
Engagement
DM.
based.
Yeah, and it's engagement. Like you say, with an elevator pitch, it doesn't matter how good the material is if you're not drawing in the
It,
person through your own
it's
mannerisms, your own
more
excitement.
salesman like.
One thing that might make for a good hook in that, and I I apply this, and I think it makes for a great element of a good hook anyway, whether you're in an original property or a licensed IP, is a great title that catches someone's attention, a great title for the campaign. I try to do this all along. My Star Wars Rock Stars campaign or Rock Band campaign is called Rebel Yell because it's right there. If I if I didn't
It
call it that, I'm sure everyone in the group would have slapped me.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Titles are
yeah,
always great because
that is a
mine are
great.
like Ashes of an Empire, with me and Nick, Legacy of the Force. Cyberpunk is City of Destiny, playing off Night City, City of Dreams.
You're Walking
My
Dead.
Walking Dead is Muerto Las Vegas because it's set in Vegas and Muerto is the opposite of Viva.
Yep. And I'm sort of safe with my titles, but for my proposed Cyberpunk, probably gonna push back probably to next year, just because of how I'm feeling.
It's fair.
Gonna be in London, and it's gonna be London Calling.
Or like my Five Rings campaign that I'm thinking of doing. I'm borrowing off a little bit of Japanese history and calling it Legend of the Five Rings, the Oshoku Jidai.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
One of my favorite hook titles that I've used, and I've been thinking of relaunching this campaign since none of our regular group played in it.
I think I know what it is.
Oh, you know exactly what it is, I'm pretty sure. And
Tell us
I
what it
can't
is.
I can't take credit for coming up with the title. I saw it online somewhere and loved it and ran with it. Raiders of the Lost Jedi.
It
Yes.
it's like I've thought up campaigns similar to that, but I was like, no, I can't do that. Like I have some ideas for adventures that I could probably give you. And it's like I just know that like if I ran that campaign, it's like I can't. I, that's you. That's your baby. That Raiders of the Lost Jedi. It's like it's yours.
The title itself, coming across it, is what opened the door to me to, oh, what is this campaign about? Oh, this campaign it's set like your Legacy of the Force campaign, but even more so, it's set 200, 250 years after the movies. There's a whole
Ooh.
new status quo in the galaxy, and the PCs are a group of characters who are sent out into the galaxy on behalf of a benevolent organization
Quote
to,
unquote, likely.
no, not quote unquote, a genuinely benevolent organization.
Oh wow, that is actually a status quo change.
Is that a charity?
No, it's a university.
Okay, fair enough.
The University of New Alderaan, as a matter of fact.
Ooh, that is a nice name.
Nice.
But they're sent out into the galaxy on behalf of this university to locate and retrieve artifacts that are related to the Jedi and the Force as a whole. They're sent out to find locations and artifacts and bring them back to increase the knowledge of basically mythical beings. Yes, there are Jedi at large in the galaxy at this point in time, but their origins and their past are so shrouded in mystery that the university is looking to bring that more into the fore so that
And it's
the galaxy at
part of
large
the
is more comfortable with
yeah, and
the
also
Jedi and the
part of
Force.
that hook as a concept is you get to. It implies that you get to see like familiar locales or new locales as well to learn
Or
more
like
about.
ancient ruins with all these
Exactly.
mystical understandings.
Or you
Though I
get
do
Now,
have to
to see like
ask,
classic
I know it's called
locations.
Raiders of the Lost Jedi, but have you had a villain yet go Kalima, Kalima?
I did not get to that point when I was running it because one of the reasons I want to relaunch it is that uh, the dread scheduling demon killed the campaign. Killed,
Schedule gets another one.
yep. But I want to relaunch it, and I've had an idea since I ran my limited. Well, since I ran my one limited campaign, which also is a high concept hook. Since I ran my limited campaign, I've thought, hey, you know what? Raiders of the Lost Jedi might work better in a similar form. Because one of the problems that I had with it is I had this great high concept. It was a great hook. The players loved it. I had some villains in there. I had an idea for where the villains were wanting to go, but it's like, okay, a lot of the sessions, given the premise, run the risk of being very samey.
Honestly, that kind of brings up the fact that like maybe a separate episode for us should be about like campaign thinking.
Yeah, that is a good.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because not
and
all
that can also.
campaigns are campaigns, ongoing living campaigns, and some are meant to be smaller, tighter campaigns.
Yeah, that's why we have the different things. Like there's continuing campaign, one shots, and then limited campaigns.
Yeah. Like I plan on starting a limited campaign in a couple months, which is one that some players have played before. I'm doing Dark Forces again.
Yeah, and then like I
Just because it
spoke in a previous
it fits with the
episode,
time, yeah.
and like I spoke in a previous episode, my Ashes of an Empire campaign started out as a sandbox, but like Daryl, I found a point where I was like, okay, I don't really know where to go with this. So that's why I put it on hiatus, both to do Legend of the Five Rings, but also to rethink, okay, I need to transform this back into a limited campaign. And luckily, our last session before the hiatus gives me a good place to run it with.
Awesome.
Or you could find locations that ways to adapt it back into a sandbox, but that just depends on how things go.
Yes, and on Daryl's point, if he ever wants to, since he wants to do Raiders of the Lost Jedi again, the media has given you a lot more locations and a lot more material to work with.
Oh,
Especially
absolutely.
with the High Republic era.
High Republic, the Cal Kestis series, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I have so much more to work with now, and I mean, although it's very, very obvious,
Afra has to be a character.
as soon as I saw, well, Afra's dead. Afra's 200 years dead, Nick.
But not her great clone.
Yes.
Since seeing one of the few things that I really took out of Rise of Skywalker saying, ooh, I can work with that, is Luke and Leia's sabers on Tatooine.
Yeah, that's stuff.
That fits in with the theme of the villains that they would have to be, or that they would be fighting, presuming that I carry the same villains over into
Yeah,
this new version, which I probably would. But I
like,
have new goals for them that I can work with, and the players I now have new paths that I can take them on that the canon has given me to get
but
them there.
All I can say is
on
you bring in Kali Malgai, and I'm in.
on t- but also on top of the fact of how you bait campaigns, you should be honest when you feel like, are these ongoing campaigns or are these limited campaigns? There is a
Yeah,
difference.
be upfront with that.
And I absolutely did that with my limited campaign, which another high concept elevator pitch hook, which
Yep.
was Star Wars Les Miserables. I had been trying for years to figure out how to do a Les Mis inspired Star Wars game.
And I feel
It was
like I
something.
threw a wrench into the things.
It was
No,
still
not really.
glorious.
I I had been trying to figure out a way to do it, and I just couldn't. I was trying to figure out the hook because, okay, Star Wars Les Mis, great. There's a high concept that can work as a hook, but I didn't have anything else to go with it. I didn't have a story hook. I had a title hook, and I don't remember what
And a
it was.
concept. It like behind that is like saying like Star Wars Les Mis is like that's a concept.
But suddenly it occurred to me one day, oh, this story starts on Coruscant right at the end of Return of the Jedi.
It's the big scene at the end where they're
It's the
toppling the
cheering
statue.
scene, like, yeah, he's
It's
dead.
the it's the cheering scene that, thanks to the ancillary media, the aftermath novels, leads it directly into the Empire cracking
Cracking
down.
down.
So that's the moment in, if you know the musical or the movie version of the musical,
Or
that's,
history, because Les Mis is actually about the French Revolution.
well, specifically the scene that I'm talking
Yeah.
specifically a scene where that's, do you hear the people sing, where the students are like, yeah, we're the resistance, we're the revolution, and then the Paris police and military crack down on them.
Cannons and troops and it's
And
the part
so,
where everyone's like forgets. Oh wait, that's what happens next.
It's like,
right.
okay, he may be dead, but doesn't mean his empire's gone.
So that gave me the hook. And that's when I knew that I could do it. But I also knew, okay, if this is Star Wars Les Mis, this is not an ongoing campaign. This isn't an open-ended campaign. This has an end point.
Same thing with my limited campaign that I'm going to do later this year. Dark Forces. It's based off of an old video game from the PC era. One of the earliest Star Wars video games to use like actual like footage and like licensed material. But the idea is simple. It's like you are rebel agents. You are trying to stop this new Imperial project. That's the bits. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
And if we're
The
getting
main
back,
you
yes, go ahead.
you more learn about what the project is. You gather allies and stuff like that. And beat it. But it's like just like a video game, you are going to go through quote unquote levels, missions, and it will end with you succeeding or not.
Yes, and going back on the hook, another thing that's inspired me to create my hooks is actually because I'm a little bit of history buff. I study history a little bit, or listen to history. Because when I was thinking of my Ashes of an Empire campaign, kind of what Daryl said in Les Miserables, like maybe the head dies, but it doesn't mean that the empire is immediately gone. Because I thought a lot about the Roman Empire. It
Yeah.
fractured, cracked, but it still took hundreds of years for it to finally just fully be gone. Same thing with an empire. The Emperor Palpatine may be dead, but that doesn't mean his cronies, his holdings, his hold on the core worlds, industrial worlds, corporate sector, none of that's going to fade overnight. It's going to be a slog getting through it. So you were basically just people trying to live through this tumultuous time in the period where the balance of power is shifting, but it hasn't fully shifted yet onto the New Republic side.
This is true, yeah.
Or another fun thing is you can intrigue your players with a concept rather than the world. Because I remember, I forget which episode it was, but we talked about like good campaign starters, and we brought up the idea that we're going to implement in the future of we're going to pick a campaign and we're going to run it, but it'll be all three of us. And we don't have a set out campaign end. It's I end on a cliffhanger, then Daryl does whatever he wants with it. Then once he's done, Nick does whatever he wants with it.
We're kind of playing that out with our Delta Green. Technically, it's my Delta Green campaign with you two as well involved in it. I would say that's a
little different because we're basically what happens in the interim, but your overstretched campaign is still yours, fully yours.
Yeah,
but it's a similar sort of. It's not a full round. I would call it like a round robin. Like we're going one person to the next person.
Yeah, this would be more of a round robin.
Yeah, we're going full DC challenge with what we were talking about before.
But it's as close as we have right now, which was also something I didn't initially plan until I was talking with you guys after the first session. It's like I have the campaign I'm running for Delta Green for my players is a very long, drawn-out campaign.
It's like one of the big three that the publisher has printed. I think at least 3 like overarching campaigns that they've done in Delta Green, and Nick is using one of them.
What I wanted to, that I followed the writer for years, and so been wanting to run it, was there's a 15-year span between Adventure 1 and Adventure 2. So it was
so what the heck happens in 15 years?
And I didn't want to fill those gaps.
I decided, I'll let you guys fill that gaps. I have plans for if things happen, specifically if they go insane. It was I'm trusting them to do that so that once we get back into the main campaign, which will be a bit more streamlined out of that. I didn't intend for that.
Yeah, we didn't intend for that, but it's also Delta Green is based in the real world. Like we still follow real world principles. We just have cosmic horror in there as well. So we have the 15-year time drum, so things are going to evolve. Technology, people, events, politics, all that stuff is going to evolve with us.
And I was initially considering, I can't just do this with, a couple roles and a few, interview style, like what happened with you in 15 years? 15 years is a lot of time.
It's let me tell you.
And Robert and I both had ideas for Delta Green games, but not necessarily enough to constitute a campaign. But it's easy enough to adapt those into, for want of a better term, Monster of the Week episodes.
Yeah.
A framework.
I'm trying a little bit of making mine Monster of the Week, but still they're in part of a smaller overarching subplot. But it'd still be something I could run it as a scenario, but I think it would work better in this because not only do you have the overarching plot of Nick's campaign, but there's Monster of the Weeks with you, and then this subplot with me.
I've also made certain halfway to try and tie those things in. I am paying attention to tie all of it into the overarching campaign. But that's fun idea.
I think that our games, Robert, in that campaign, working with established characters that are growing throughout all of this helps with player buy-in too.
Yes, very much.
Because we don't have to launch a new campaign. It's this is part of the existing campaign. That character that you already love to play in Delta Green, they're in this story.
They're still going on.
Because you think you do one thing and Delta Green's done with you. No. you're in it for life now.
It's
Absolutely.
just irregular. It's like you were on one mission. Here's some more missions, but guess what? That's not part. The whole mission arc is my arc. It's like honestly, really. So when we do that proper round robin in the future, I think we can have a lot of fun with that.
Oh, absolutely, because I plan my installment or installments, depending on how we do it, in that I'm going to go full Bat-S crazy like DC Challenge did.
Yeah, and we're gonna do our sub. I'm gonna do my subplot, and then Daryl and I are gonna team up for a certain event that happens in that 15 years.
That too, yeah.
And I have an idea for, Y2K.
And again, like for whenever anyone goes mad, I know exactly what to do with them. Even if they die, I have plans for them.
Yeah, and I remember after we finished the first part of the actual overarching campaign, you did your one shot, and you decided to go a little bit with creepypasta on us, and it was very fun.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to give like a classic. Like the campaign I'm running is way more like if you could be like it's hard to say like Delta Green high concept, but it's Delta Green high concept. It's
Yeah, it's
King
more
in Yellow.
existentialism rather than there's a monster, go kill it or survive it.
So when I ended my part of it, I added on a quick Gulp Man, Slender Man conflict.
And it was really fun. We had some great character moments, and I just love how you subverted expectations to where it was like, no, these aren't really smart cultists. These are just idiots who got a book and did it wrong.
That came from like one of my first runs. It's like, wait, what if they just edgy goths at my high school and they just like summoned a demon and we're like, oh no!
Yeah, because Delta Green's always about there's always these underlining groups, these sorcerers who have studied these secret organizations. You just went no, these are just idiot hillbillies that found a book.
They found a book and were like, oh, we did that? Oh no!
And our characters are like, you idiot! I remember my character basically had a Yosemite Sam moment in our campaign. We was like,
Then they got just wiped out by the Slender Man.
What, if anything else, do we have to add to make a good hook?
I think we should probably go like in a circle, like what do we think is the best hook concept that we have on our mind right now?
just like what we thought up.
Yeah, just at the moment, like what would be like your favorite hook that you've used?
Favorite hook that I've used? I would say my favorite hook that I've ever used is actually the one we used for Legacy of the Force, Nick. We gave the scenario, we said it was going to be like this, but also in the pitch we said we're going a different way from established Star Wars. So what you're expecting out of a Star Wars campaign, we're basically going to shake the bottle, and you're going to see a different take on Star Wars. And with our players, they're very established fans of Star Wars, and
so they knew what
that drew them in. They're like, you're not going to go with kind of the Star Wars idea. You're going to shake it up a little, try something new. I'm game.
Especially if because you're kind of pretty traditional Star Wars. I'm very traditional Star Wars. So yeah, it's breaking them up.
Most of it, we all are, but we were just like, no, let's go a different way. Let's go down path B instead of path A.
I'll go next. My favorite hook was ironically, we didn't mention it, but like a beginner game or starter set. Whisper Base has been a long-going campaign we've had, and I took a starter set, a box set, basically to begin an Age of Rebellion Star Wars game. And yes, Star Wars is my thing, but there's something here. There's a concept here. You get a base. You got like antagonists. It did help that I had like players, like especially Xander, your Xander, Daryl, that
I knew
that had like a unique concept for their character, but the main factor that was like it starts out with them like taking a base and getting information, and like that's opened up a whole lot of ideas, and like that's fun. So sometimes you can just take like out of the box ideas that like stop at the box. This box has legs.
I guess that leaves me, and I think my favorite hook that I've used has got to be Raiders of the Lost Jedi, because the title alone tells you everything you need to know. It's exactly what's advertised on the tin. And then when you add in the description that you are a group that is locating,
Or the future,
yeah,
and like you're in a familiar universe, but not.
completely uncharted territory, and the status quo can be whatever I want it to be.
But you can revisit and find past iconography.
Right. And the player's existing knowledge of the property is not a detriment, because they don't have to wonder, oh, has that happened yet? Because I would love to run a High Republic campaign too. But you also have that, oh, wait, everything that I know about Star Wars hasn't happened yet.
I do like that conceit of like depending, especially now, post we're getting close to post High Republic, which is a weird way of saying things. But regardless, like people can come into this revival of Raiders of the Lost Jedi and be like Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, Tales of the Jedi, High Republic, Clone Wars, Rebels.
The other beautiful thing about that concept for Raiders of the Lost Jedi, every part of Star Wars history, be it canon or legends, can be
Fair game.
something that the characters heard about. Because even if you stick strictly to the canon timeline, that far in the future, they might have heard these tall tales about things that happened that are now legend. Now the legends
Or
continuity.
or pull in legends and be like, that's actually a thing.
Right. It's open-ended. The title tells you the kind of flavor that you want to have for that. And
It evokes the right feel because we all know you want Star Wars explained to play in your game.
oh, I would love for Alex and Molly to play in any of my games, because
No,
they are awesome.
it
But
would be
I
Alex. Alex would be
no,
the one to play the game.
they both play RPGs. But
But he's the Indiana Jones fan.
that's true. That is very true. At the same time, from hearing them talk on the show, they're more interested in doing one of the various D&D ports to Star Wars out there.
Oh, ew! Like the
Yeah.
5e one.
And that's because they're familiar with D&D. They play D&D.
Let's not get into that.
Yeah. Because
But
we've talked about
just,
our favorite hooks, but now I've got a
yeah.
question for us.
Oh,
Since we know a lot of systems, read a lot of established books, what in any of those have been the best hooks we've ever seen? Because I'll start. I actually have two for mine. Well,
okay.
one's a little bit out there, but the first one is that it's actually a one shot of Delta Green Iran. It was basically, okay, your players are playing two different teams. One team that's coming in to question another team about an operation that went completely foobar. So when you're playing that one team where everything went foobar, each character is saying how it went down, but in their own mind. So when one player's rendition, the other players are acting completely different from another character's rendition, and it's basically a big hold. Here's how it went down,
Rashomon,
and then
basically.
and then
Yeah.
Rashomon, and then
Rashomon, yeah.
the interrogation team has to figure out, okay, who do we believe, if any of them?
Which
And
again,
then the second,
I agree. That's a great like one shot hook. You don't know who's telling the truth. Are you telling the truth? Are you telling the truth? Is truth the matter of fact? you don't know.
Yeah, and
Really
then
fun.
the second hook I found or just discovered that I thought might be interesting is that I've been reading an audiobook about the Star Wars book that just recently came out a few months ago. Star Wars The Mask of Fear. It's basically
Yeah, Master
Reign of
Fear is
the
really
Empire.
good.
I've been listening to that and I thought, okay, we've heard a lot about like the Fomenting Rebellion years, but what about the time just after the Empire in Star Wars has been formed? I was like, oh, just reading the story would be really cool to be like each character is a senator of a different place, and they basically a big politics game. You're playing in that formation period of the Empire. It's like, is your character one of the senators that's more resistant to the Empire? Is your character more of a bootlicker or someone who actually believes in the Empire?
Oh, like I've
And
been
kind of
reading
the
that
politics of that.
actually. Like I would like to run one, but like it's so intricate and it would require like a specific type of players. Like I know
Yeah,
I could probably name like 3 or 4 that I feel that would be into that, but it's like it would definitely not be action packed, but it'd be more intrigue
yeah,
based. Like
intrigue, politics, kind of trying to go that far out, but without drawing attention to yourselves.
I say like probably be like a blaster fight every 10 or 17 sessions. It would be fun, but I would need the right players. Like
Exactly.
good choices. Daryl, what do you think?
So, the favorite hook that I've encountered as a player, that's hard to say. I want to say it's a toss up between two, and
Oh, I have
no,
two.
no offense to either of you. Neither of you are the GM for this. They were both one shots. The first is a couple of years ago. They're both from Gamer Nation Con.
Cool.
GM Chris, co-host of the Order 66 podcast.
Which no one watches. That's a
No
joke,
one
running
listens to
joke.
the Order 66 podcast.
We just hear
A
about it.
couple years ago, his game that he ran was, and again, this dips into an established property, but it's not one that has an official RPG, but he used the Genesys system to do The Last Starfighters. And
Classic movie.
it was all vehicle based.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember this. You said it was really fun and good.
It was. There were 6
And,
players,
and there's a
and each
modified version of the Genesis like vehicle group.
there were 6 players that were grouped in pairs. That one was the pilot, the navigator of the Gunstar, the other was the starfighter, the one manning the weapons. And you had to work in tandem. Because it's an RPG, you can't have everyone having exactly the same thing. Each of us had Gunstars that had specialized weapons on them. That was a lot of fun. The other one, also GM Chris, and Nick is going to lose his mind when I say this, his familiar setting.
That's what I was thinking you were
Genesys,
going to say.
where
I don't know what you're talking about.
you play
Mm-hmm.
you play the animal familiars of powerful sorcerers.
And that sounds vaguely familiar, but I probably wasn't there.
Sure, Nick. You jumped across the table to grab the snake as soon as you saw that you could be a snake. You jumped across the table, grabbed the character sheet, and shouted, "I want to be a snake!"
Mm-hmm.
You
I
play
don't know what you're talking about.
you play the animal familiars, and being animals, you don't have high stats.
Very squishy.
You're very squishy. Yes, you can speak because you're infused with magic, because you're these sorcerers' familiars, but you have to navigate the world as animals, as a cat, a snake, a rat, things like that. And it was so much fun. That setting is available on Drive-Thru RPG as part of the Genesys Foundry program. It is well worth the price of
This is
admission.
true. This is true, and there are pretty strong animals in there.
But those are probably 2 of the most memorable in recent memory that I can think of.
How about you, Nick? What are you thinking?
For me, there was a game that I played in, And think about it, it's like I played it online about 3 years ago, but the idea was that you were owls. It was like a D&D homebrew, like I think it was that movie from Zack Snyder with the animated owls. The
I,
Owls of
I
Ga'Hoole.
I was gonna say I only know it as the Zack Snyder Owl movie.
Honestly, it was really fun. We only played for like a couple weeks. Yeah, it was during quarantine.
Wait, Nick, were you cheating on us?
I wouldn't
Were
call it
you gaming
cheating.
with other people,
And not at the con.
Nick?
It was only for a month.
A month?
They were in Europe.
You don't
Oh, you
know
had
her.
to
She
go
doesn't even
exotic?
go here. Nick cheated on us. I feel so used and dirty.
It was on the
What does that mean?
weekdays.
Is that a cause for a divorce? Can we get some of his assets?
That's not how that works.
Yeah, we're filing divorce proceedings.
I think Texas is in that. Is that
Texas is a common law state.
One of you gets the call, and she is not going to be easy to handle.
Sorry,
No,
people
you
aren't
can-
property. We can't get that.
Yeah, you keep Nicole. Anyway, I think we've
Fine,
diverged and tortured Nick enough.
Fine. I have one more thing that probably will be within in realm. During our D&D games, I implemented something we were using in our Star Wars games. A character that we've been using significantly, and sort of our multiversal character.
Yes.
Watch out, Nick. Marshall Mathers could sue you for copyright infringement once you say the name.
Why do you think I'm not saying the name? He disappears underneath a blinking light source, usually within a alleyway.
Yeah, he's the cliche merchant that shows up everywhere.
Yes.
He is cloaked in shadow, and he's on the slender side.
That's a way of saying it. Now, we don't want to be copyright striked.
So we shall not say it.
But there's plenty of ways to bring in different elements, different ideas that have always coming around and everything.
Heck, we added another character that he's always with now after one of a certain campaign.
I think we have covered all of the ground, guys.
Yeah,
We may have done it in a pretty roundabout way. We may not have had clearly defined points on how to come up with a hook, but I think we have gotten a pretty good idea of what makes for a good hook and how to help find a good hook.
Yeah, we put plenty of nuggets in there.
But isn't that the creative process?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think through our roundabout, we've shown that there's no outline to making a hook. It is up to the individual.
Yeah, and the hooks can come from anywhere.
I would like to say one thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'd like to reach out to our viewers and say, hey, have a hook in your mind? You want us to look at them? Comment
Just the viewers, Nick? You don't care about the podcast listeners? You only care about YouTube?
Yeah, come on. All you viewers and listeners.
Viewers and listeners.
But yeah,
I know we said no one listens to the Order 66 podcast, but come on.
No one listens to the Order 66 podcast.
But we're not the Order 66 podcast.
So don't lump us in with them.
Chris would be rather cross if we tried to, take his podcast away.
If you do listen to us here on YouTube, here on podcast, give us your hooks.
Yeah. What did you do?
Yes.
Well, what did you find enjoyable?
What hooks have you used that have worked? How have you come up with your hooks? We'd love to hear it and maybe incorporate it into a future episode. And that gives me a great segue to say, check out our website at howwerollgaming.com. And while you're there, you'll find links to all of our socials. You'll find information about our current campaigns and a link to our merch store. And if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, topics you'd like us to cover, or even submit your own favorite hooks or how you come up with your hooks, shoot us an email at podcast@howwerollgaming.com, and we will be glad to hear them and possibly incorporate them into a future episode. By our next episode, Gamer Nation Con 10 will have come and gone, and
we'll be there.
And our next episode, we'll be taking a look back at the con, and hopefully we will have a special guest or special guests.
Oh, I think didn't they make a
Hopefully,
important
Daryl. I
announcement
think
that we
definitely.
know?
I am hedging bets, but we did see at least one person say in writing that they would be willing to participate. Now we'll just have to hold them to it.
You know
It'd
who
be
you are.
very unfortunate, very disappointing to our viewers and listeners if they weren't there next time.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. But I
And
think
we'll
we will.
remind them of that.
Yes, we will be reminding them of that next weekend at the con. But in the meantime, thank you once again for listening to the How We Roll Gaming podcast. We hope to have you back again next time. And until then, as always, I'm Daryl.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Robert.
And this is How We Roll.